In the 17th century, the English civil wars between royalists and republicans tore the country apart. The parliamentary conspirators would have to keep promoting their agenda. William's glorious progress had to be turned into a plausible new chapter in British history. Mary's Stuart lineage now came into play. She and William were offered a joint monarchy. They'd rule together. This had never happened before, and it hasn't happened since. But this special arrangement allowed a story that was really about conspiracy and intrigue to be transformed into the tale of an orderly succession that backed up William and Mary's claim to the throne. The Bill of Rights gave the conspirators the constrained monarchy they wanted. It strikes me that this bill was a very finely judged piece of sort of political magic. Is that correct?
I think that the main thing that it was intended to try to sort of persuade people of was that this was not an invasion.
So that's part one, and then part two is absolute power to a monarchy in service to Parliament was almost complete. The Bill of Rights. It legitimised the joint monarchy of William and Mary, but it also gave more power to Parliament. Much more power. So much that you could call it a revolution. And if you happen to be a Protestant parliamentarian, then you might even think that it was all rather glorious. Middle of a snowstorm on the 29th of March in Towton, Yorkshire. The Lancastrian and Yorkist forces clashed head to head. The result was utter carnage. The Lancastrians started out the day pretty well, but then the tide began to turn against them. They were chased by the Yorkists down this steep and icy slope. The blizzard was still blowing, and that little river at the bottom was flooded, so they couldn't get any further. This meant that the Yorkists came down the hill and started massacring them. So ill that the killing was so great that there's been nothing else quite as bad in the whole of our history. On the first day of the Battle of the Somme in July 1916, 19,000 British soldiers were killed. But here at Towton, contemporary reports talk about 28,000 dead. That's 1% of the entire population killed on a single day. Chapel was begun by Henry VI, but he didn't finish it, did he?
Well, the chapel had been being built for quite some time, but then the Wars of the Roses happened, resources got diverted, and so when Henry VII became king, it was unfinished. It looked nothing like this, none of this beautiful vaulted...
On steroids. What kind of chemicals have they been treated with to make them so juicy and enormous? They look like cabbages.
It's Tudor chemicals, isn't it? It's the sort of vitality, the virility of the Tudors. And of course, above the Tudor rose, you see the crown. So again, it's underlying, these are now royal symbols.
This is Henry saying, game over.
Yeah.
Now it's the Tudors all the way. Victoria was now the longest-serving monarch in British history. 300,000 people had lined the streets to watch the Queen making her procession from Buckingham Palace all the way up here to St. Paul's Cathedral. Everything. But perhaps even more importantly, this was a chance to celebrate the best thing that had ever happened to Britain, its empire. Ruled over 370 million subjects across the globe. And the jewel in the empire's crown was India. Now, obviously, India brought a slap on the back to celebrate Britain's imperial. Little mentioned that India had been won by fighting bloody battles against Indian resistance. This history of Victoria's reign was published in Jubilee year 1897. And the writer brings the story of empire right up into the ex-East India Company men coming back to Britain with these huge piles of cash. And they were ready to splash it about on buying property and power. This is Season Coat in Gloucestershire, purchased in 1795 by a company man, Colonel John Cockrell, by his brothers, also company men, Charles and Samuel. The Cockrell family created a fantasy mini version of India here in the middle of the Cotswolds. From the inside, the house seems like a fairly standard Palladian villa. But on the outside, it's been given this fantastical Mughal coating. There are Muslim architectural features, like the green dome on the top and the minarets, and these very distinctive, deeply overhanging eaves. Then again, on top of that, there are the architectural jokes in the corners, above the arch up there. Well, we've got some Union Jacks. With its mash, he's got his little slippers on again, and he is riding upon a strange creature.
I believe it's a camel. Yes, effectively. The bigger concerns here are not so much about Hastings as a person, but about what the East India Company is doing, how governance is being carried out in India. But of course, all